Majid. The topic that I'm just trying to... Louder?
Closer.
The topic I'm trying to sort of present to you is the topic of the Sunnah. There seems to be a controversy going around with the term Sunnah these days, and I just want to clarify some of our beliefs about it. In Arabic, literally, the word Sunnah means a clear path or a busy path, a well-trodden path. In Islam, for mainstream Muslims, the Sunnah are the traditions and practices of the Islamic Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that constitute a model for Muslims to follow. Better? Yeah. Better. Oh, okay. So the Sunnah are tradition and practices of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and constitute a model for Muslims to follow. The Sunnah is what all the Muslims of Muhammad, peace be upon him's time, evidently saw and followed and passed on to the next generation. And according to classical Islamic theory, the Sunnah are documented by the ahadith, the authentic ahadith, the verbally transmitted record of the teachings, deeds, and sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. This is how we define the Sunnah. And for mainstream Muslims, Sunnah is the Sunnah of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, what is the need for Sunnah? The religion which we have been blessed by the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran only lays down general guidelines and does not have very many specifics. And a comprehensive education of the Ummah requires a muallim al-Quran, or a person which is a prophet, to explain and expand on these matters mentioned in the Quran. He is the pivot for us, around which our knowledge of the deen has become more comprehensive, because the Quran itself leaves a lot of things for the prophet to expand on. Very simply, all of us know that the Quran does not mention how to do our salat or namaz, how many rakats to do, what to say in each rakat, how to do the raku or the sujood. All these are the practices the Prophet did, showed, and told us about, and have been documented for us. The way of doing the fast in Ramadan, the way of doing the pilgrimage, the Hajj, is documented by the Prophet according to what he did. The way we pay our zakat, and to whom we pay our zakat, all these are generalized in the Quran but not specified, especially the amount that is taken out as zakat for us is specifically a sunnah coming from the Prophet. And these are all the things that we do as religious practices that are incumbent on us on the example of the Prophet. And as Dr. Khasrudi said, the Prophet is one of the best exemplars for us to follow. Now, why is this knowledge so easy to understand? For us Muslims, there is no problem. Sunnah for us is Sunnah of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in the post 9/11 world, in the West especially, there is a lot of confusion being created. This world of Islamophobia, with Quran burnings, arson attacks on masajid, Muslim bans, demands to ban the Sharia, as you noted in several other states, has risen. And Islam is facing not only physical challenges, but intellectual challenges also. There is a long-standing Orientalist project to separate Muslims from the Prophet. So that way they can just say, yes, God is someone that everyone believes in. Yes. The afterlife, akhirah, a lot of Christians believe in that. There's no problem with those two concepts. But the prophet is a problem. Your prophet, how do you sort of get rid of that intermediary, the prophet, separate the prophet from the Muslims? And this is what is happening nowadays. If you go to universities and take courses in philosophy or Islamic studies, you will find books written by prominent Islamic Orientalist scholars. I'll mention a couple of names. Joseph Schacht is a very famous European-American historian of Islam, who's written a famous book on the basis of Islamic jurisprudence. I mean, he's the one who's defining for us what the basis of Islamic jurisprudence is, that is Islamic law is. And with him is another famous scholar, Joseph Sachs, taught at Columbia. Ignaz Gould-Zahir is another famous author in a similar vein. And the latest is Patricia Crone and Cook, who are authors from Princeton. So all these Ivy League schools have people who are trying to tell us what? The Sunnah, according to Sachs, the Sunnah is the customs of Arabia in the pre-Islamic tribal arena. So they are tribal customs which were prevalent before the Prophet, peace be upon him, was even born. So they're trying to distance our Sunnah from the Prophet. Now, Patricia Crone and Cook go further. They said Islam is just a kind of a distorted sort of sect of Judaism. And the Sunnah of the Islam is nothing but the practices of the Jews who are somewhat distorted. So these are things going on in higher education here. And our children, if they go to these Ivy League schools and they go to these courses, we'll hear about it. And so we have to go back to our basic beliefs and to reinforce what Sunnah means for us, and to not allow ourselves to separate the Sunnah from the Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is an important thing I want to sort of let you know. Even some Muslim so-called progressive scholars who teach in these universities have taken on this color of trying to be, I would call them, apologists for these views. Some have even gone to the extent of denying the need for Sunnah. They said that all we need is the Quran. Allah gave us the Quran. The Prophet was there for his time, for his culture. He told the people what he wanted to do at those times. Those times are gone. We are in modern times. All we need is the Quran, and we don't need the Sunnah at all. This is happening right now in our community. So I'm just trying to alert you to that. And another thing is there's a rise of heretical tendencies. And as you know, there are Islamic, so-called Islamic groups, sects, who have their own prophets, their own sunnahs, their own ways of life. Example, the Nation of Islam. They have their own prophets. I don't know how they pray. They don't pray the way we do. They don't follow the sunnah of our prophet, although they take the name of Islam. There's, you heard of a scholar called Rashad Khalifa. He was very prominent. He had this huge following with the rise of the number 19. He said the Quran is sort of associated with the number 19, and every ayah has 19 words and so on. So these are the kind of, then he started claiming he was a prophet himself. So these are the kind of tendencies that deny the Sunnah itself. And then you come to the Ismailis. They have the Khan and they believe in him as close to sort of prophet or God or whatever, but they follow different Sunnahs. So I'm trying to say that the Sunnah that we follow as mainstream Muslims, we have to specify and be sure of what we're dealing with, and to understand that we have people around us who are trying to pull us away from the Prophet. Realize that the Muslim world...
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the difference between Sunnah and Sharia?
The Sunnah, yes. Sharia is Islamic law. And the Islamic law is based on the Quran and Sunnah. There are two links. The Quran and the Sunnah give you Islamic law, which has been ratified by the Prophet himself and by the Fuqaha after that. So that is where it is, because the Quran does not specify every aspect of law. So that has been filled in by the Sunnah and then by the Fuqaha. So that Sharia is by definition Islamic law. That's what it is. It includes religious law as well. So when you say you pray this way, that is your Sharia too. So prayers, fasting, all that, plus marriages, punishments, all those things there. But so that's one of the things I wanted to alert you to that. And then the Prophet himself, in his final farewell address in the last Hajj, he specifically said that after he's gone, he's leaving behind two things: the Quran and his example. And if we follow those, we will not be sort of going astray. So these are specific sort of recommendations from the Prophet. So why do we need what is the interrelationship between the Quran and Sunnah? As we said, the Quran has several sort of recommendations, sort of orders that need to be specified and explained. And the Prophet has done that in many instances, and that is how we have understood the deen. If the Sunnah is taken away, the Quran by itself becomes hard to follow. And I can give you a lot of examples from the seerah of the Prophet, that as you see the seerah unfolding, his life progressing, the Quranic the wahi keeps coming down. Talk about the time he was being harassed by Abu Lahab, and the surah came down targeting his uncle Abu Lahab by name. So at the time of the problems that his community was facing in Makkah, which necessitated the Muslims to make hijrah to Africa, to Abyssinia, and at that time Surah Kahf was revealed, in which the several people who were sort of Mormons were put to sleep for several hundred years. They stayed away from the kuffar. So these are the kind of things, and if you look at the seerah, time and again, if you follow the seerah, you'll see the revelations coming to the Prophet, helping him answer the kuffar's questions, supporting him in times of his distress, and encouraging him, prophesying the final victories for the Muslims. So all these are related to the seerah of the Prophet. So how can you read the Quran without reading the seerah of the Prophet, knowing what was happening and knowing how the Prophet dealt with these things? So that is why the seerah is important for us, and the Sunnah is totally sort of inconceivable to deny if we are going to see the interrelationship between the Quran, the Seerah, and the explanation that the Prophet has given to us. So I would suggest that we have to be careful in finding out how the people around us are viewing Sunnah. It's a very glib way of saying, oh, we don't need the Sunnah, we have the Quran, and we just go by it. And there's one other problem I want to let you know. There is as I said before, the Sunnah is the normative practice of the Prophet, peace be upon him, which entail his words, his deeds, and things he affirmed. That is, what he said was okay when people said, yeah, can you do this? Yes. Okay. So his orders, suggestions, his orders not to do things, and his affirmation. But then, these have come down to us in the form of ahadith. Now there's a little problem here, because ahadith, as we know, a lot of them has been sort of concocted. And so what we say is these ahadith are the authentic ahadith that we can say are the true sayings that have come down to us. A lot of, or several ahadiths have been spurious. And what people have done is they've looked at some of these spurious ahadiths and said, oh, this hadith cannot be. There's two things wrong with that. And then they say, we'll throw the baby with the bathwater. Okay, all the hadiths can go out, we don't need them, because they're all spurious. Because one is spurious, they all have to be spurious. So this is one of the the slippery slope that we're falling into, because the ahadith, by and large, are accepted by mainstream Muslims. If you are a munkar of hadith, then you're in trouble. There are, of course, spurious ahadith, but there's one other thing. Before we deny a hadith, we have to be certain that we have the knowledge. As in the Quran, we have so many things that we cannot understand. If you understand that Nuh alayhi salam lived 950 years, can anybody imagine that? But we all accept it. It's in the Quran. Similarly, in the hadith, there are things that we do not understand, but we have to accept it because we are not certain. If you want to deny that, man, you have to have a lot of evidence for it. I'm just using your brain because everyone's brain is, it's a varying degree. So what I'm suggesting is be very careful when people deny the hadith and say some of these are spurious because we don't think this is possible. Because we don't think this Allah can be unjust. Because it says that a large number of people in hell will be women. That's one of the things that has been quoted. Allah can't be unjust. There have to be many men as well. Yes, but then when you look down and see what is going on in this world, why did He create men and women different? Why did He make women suffer childbirth? Why did He make the women smaller than the men? Why did He do all these things? Is that justice? We cannot understand this. So all I'm saying is, be careful before you reject any hadith. Be careful that we sort of think twice before throwing the baby out with the bath water. Be careful in understanding that our ulama, who have worked on these things before, are not thrown out of the way and said, we know better. Because we are in the modern world. They did not know as much. That is going to be a slippery slope for us and for our next generation. Thank you very much.
You have presented beautiful thing. There are quite a few questions being raised.